He shamed his pregnant wife on live TV, until the billionaire CEO watching claimed the baby was his. The screen behind her illuminated with a face she recognized. Not her husband's. A woman's. Dark hair spilling across bare shoulders. Rumpled hotel sheets visible in the frame. Dr. Vivian Cross felt 800 pairs of eyes on her pregnant form as the woman on screen turned toward the camera. Jessica Raines. Her research assistant. The girl she'd mentored for 2 years. Then he appeared. Shirtless. Hair disheveled. Her husband's face shifting from confusion to something worse. Cold defiance. His voice carried through the ballroom speakers, amplified for everyone to hear. I was going to tell you after the ceremony, Vivian. But since everyone's watching, let's just say it. I never wanted this baby. You trapped me with this pregnancy, and I'm done pretending I want to be a father. The medal around her neck suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She was 7 months pregnant. On stage. In front of the entire medical community. And her world was ending in high definition. Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell where you're watching from and what time it is where you're at. If you're new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever. 30 minutes earlier, everything had been perfect. The grand ballroom of the Sinclair Hotel sparkled with the kind of elegance that only medical galas could afford. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic light across 800 faces. Scientists, journalists, benefactors, colleagues who'd watched Dr. Vivian Cross climb from promising researcher to the woman who'd changed the face of pediatric oncology. She stood at the podium, one hand resting on the curve of her 7-month belly, the other holding the Hartwell Medal for medical innovation. The emerald gown she'd chosen caught the light as she moved. It was the only formal dress that still fit, tailored specifically to accommodate the life growing inside her. This research represents 5 years of my life, she said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. Gene therapy for pediatric leukemia isn't just theory anymore. We've seen remission rates that exceed anything previously documented. Children who had months to live are celebrating birthdays. Families who were planning funerals are planning graduations. The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed from the media section. At the press table, reporters typed furiously, already crafting headlines about the brilliant young researcher who was changing medicine. Dr. Margaret Chen, the ceremony host, approached with a microphone and a knowing smile. Before we conclude, I understand congratulations are doubly in order tonight. Your first child? Vivian's hand moved instinctively to her belly. Yes. A daughter. Due in 8 weeks. How wonderful. The audience murmured their approval. Dr. Chen leaned closer, her voice taking on that conspiratorial tone that television hosts perfected. And where is the proud father this evening? I'm sure he's bursting with pride over everything you've accomplished. A ripple of expectant laughter moved through the crowd. My husband couldn't make it tonight, Vivian began carefully. His own research commitments, you understand. But Dr. Chen was already gesturing to someone in the production booth. Actually, we have a surprise. We've arranged a video call so he can share this incredible moment with you. Vivian's stomach dropped. That's really not necessary. Too late. The massive screen behind her was already illuminating. The feed was connecting. She could hear the dial tone amplified through the sound system. This was supposed to be her moment. 5 years of sleepless nights. 5 years of failed trials and breakthrough discoveries. 5 years of fighting for funding and facing skepticism and proving that gene therapy could work when everyone said it was impossible. And now, in front of everyone who mattered in her field, they were calling her husband. Marcus, who'd been distant for months. Marcus, who'd stopped coming to her appointments. Marcus, who looked at her growing belly like it was a tumor instead of their daughter. The call connected. What appeared on screen wasn't Marcus Chen's home office, where he should have been reviewing grant proposals and preparing for his own presentation at the biotechnology conference next week. It was a hotel room. Expensive, judging by the furniture visible in the frame. Dim lighting. Rumpled white sheets that caught the glow from a bedside lamp. And a woman's back. bare shoulders, dark hair spilling in waves across pale skin. The ballroom fell silent. Not the reverent silence of anticipation. The stunned silence of collective shock. The woman on screen turned toward the camera, squinting slightly as if she'd just woken up. Hello? Vivian's blood turned to ice. She knew that face. Jessica Raines. 24 years old. Brilliant. Ambitious. The doctoral candidate Vivian had personally recruited to her research team 2 years ago. The girl she'd mentored through late-night experiments and grant writing sessions and moments of scientific breakthrough. The girl she'd introduced to Marcus at a faculty dinner 8 months ago. Jessica's eyes widened as she realized what she was looking at. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Oh God, is this? Movement behind her. Someone else in the bed. Marcus appeared in frame, shirtless, his face cycling through emotions in rapid succession. Confusion. Horror. And then something that made Vivian's heart stop. Cold resignation. He reached across Jessica and snatched the phone. Dr. Chen was making frantic cutting motions to the production team, but the damage was already done. The image was burned into 800 retinas. The feed was streaming live to thousands of viewers watching at home. Marcus, Vivian whispered, but the microphone picked it up and carried her broken voice across the silent ballroom like a scream. Vivian. His voice was flat. Clinical. The same tone he used when discussing failed experiments. I was going to tell you after the ceremony. Behind him, Jessica scrambled to cover herself with a sheet, her face pale with mortification. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her professional composure cracking. Dr. Chen, you're on live television. Perhaps this conversation should happen privately. But Marcus wasn't looking at the host. He was looking directly at the camera. At Vivian. At the 800 witnesses and thousands watching from home. Good, he said. Then everyone can know the truth. Vivian felt her knees weaken. The ballroom seemed to tilt around her. This charade has gone on long enough. Marcus moved closer to the camera, and Vivian could see his eyes now. Cold. Resentful. Eyes that used to look at her with warmth and partnership and shared dreams. You trapped me with this pregnancy, Vivian. We both know it. I told you I wasn't ready for children. I told you my research needed my full attention, that we should wait until after my tenure review. But you stopped taking your birth control without telling me. The room gasped collectively. Vivian heard someone near the front whisper, "Oh my God." Marcus, please, she managed. Her hand gripped the podium for support. The baby kicked against her ribs as if sensing her mother's distress. I never wanted this baby, he continued, each word deliberate and cutting. I wanted a partner in research. An equal. Not a wife playing house and derailing both our careers with this. He gestured vaguely toward her belly, visible to him through the camera feed. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Jessica appeared behind him, wrapped in the hotel sheet now, her face crumpled with tears. Marcus, just hang up. Please just hang up. This child is a mistake I refuse to let define my life, Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. You wanted the award, the acclaim, the perfect life. The brilliant researcher and devoted mother. You can have all of it, Vivian. But you'll have it without me. The screen went black. For 3 seconds, the ballroom existed in perfect silence. 800 people holding their collective breath. Then the murmurs started. Low at first, then building. Voices overlapping. Shock and sympathy and scandalized whispers. Vivian stood alone on stage, the medal still in her hand, her pregnant belly on display for everyone to see and pity and judge. Dr. Chen was beside her suddenly, hands fluttering helplessly. Dr. Cross, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. If we'd known. Vivian straightened. The audience was watching. The cameras were still rolling. Hundreds of thousands of people would see this footage within hours. It would define her. The pregnant researcher humiliated on live television. The woman whose husband rejected her and their unborn child in front of the world. She could break now, or she could survive. Thank you for this honor, she said quietly into the microphone. Her voice only shook slightly. If you'll excuse me. She walked off stage. Not running. Not fleeing. moving with deliberate grace, head high, one hand supporting her belly. The applause that followed was scattered and uncomfortable. Pity disguised as support. Backstage, production assistants reached for her, mouths forming sympathetic platitudes she couldn't hear through the roaring in her ears. She kept walking. Through the corridor. Past the holding room where she'd waited nervously before the ceremony. Past her colleagues calling her name with concern thick in their voices. The emergency exit sign glowed red ahead. She pushed through the door into the cool darkness of the parking garage. Only then did she let herself stop. Her hands found the side of her car, gripping the hood for support as her legs threatened to give out. Breathe, she told herself. Just breathe. Her purse vibrated against her hip. Phone buzzing incessantly. Text messages and calls flooding in. Her mother in Portland. Her research team. Colleagues who'd witnessed everything. Media outlets already smelling blood in the water. She silenced it all. Inside her car, with the door closed and the garage embracing her with concrete silence, Dr. Vivian Cross finally allowed herself to feel it. Not sobs. She was too shocked for that. Just deep, measured breaths that burned through her chest like acid. Her hand moved to her belly, where her daughter shifted and kicked, blissfully unaware that her father had just rejected her on international television. Focus, Vivian whispered to herself. Just get home. She started the engine and drove through the city streets on autopilot. Red lights and turn signals and familiar routes her body knew even when her mind had gone numb. Home was a townhouse in the university district. She'd lived there for 4 years with Marcus. They'd painted the walls together. Assembled furniture from Swedish boxes with incomprehensible instructions. Made love in every room and laughed about their future and planned the nursery down the hall. Now it felt alien. His coffee cup still sat in the sink from this morning. His jacket hung by the door. His laptop sat closed on the kitchen table where he'd been working before leaving for his trip. The trip that had apparently included Jessica Raines and a hotel room and the destruction of everything Vivian had believed about her life. She moved through the space methodically, pulling boxes from the garage, beginning to pack his belongings with the same systematic precision she brought to her research. Organize. Categorize. Remove the contamination. His clothes went into one box. His books into another. The framed photo of them at their wedding, both grinning in front of the research building where they'd met, went face down into a third box. She was labeling the boxes with a permanent marker when her doorbell rang. It was nearly midnight now. Hours had passed in a blur of packing and silence, and the baby's occasional movements reminding her she wasn't entirely alone. Media. Probably. Some enterprising reporter who'd tracked down her address and wanted a statement. A quote. Tears on camera to complete the narrative of the brilliant woman brought low by betrayal. She ignored it. The doorbell rang again. Persistent. Then her phone lit up on the counter. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Dr. Cross, a man's voice said. Deep. Controlled. Familiar somehow, though she couldn't place it. It's Julian Thorne. I'm at your door. I need 5 minutes of your time. Vivian's mind went blank. Julian Thorne. CEO of Thorne Biomedical, the pharmaceutical giant that had funded her research through their foundation. A man whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations. A figure she'd met exactly twice in professional settings, always surrounded by handlers and attorneys and the invisible barrier that separated billionaires from ordinary people. Why was he at her house at midnight? Mr. Thorne, she managed. This really isn't a good time. I'm aware. His voice carried the authority of someone unaccustomed to being refused. This couldn't wait. What happened tonight was unconscionable. But it's also created a problem we need to address immediately. Despite her exhaustion, despite the numbness, curiosity sparked. What problem? The optics. Your research is at a critical juncture. We're weeks from FDA approval on the gene therapy protocol. Tonight's incident will be weaponized by competitors, by critics, by everyone who wants to undermine your credibility. Vivian's hand tightened on the phone. I'm aware of how this looks, Mr. Thorne. But my personal life doesn't invalidate 5 years of clinical trials. It shouldn't. But it will be used to distract from the science. There was a pause. Unless we control the narrative. She moved to the front door, peering through the peephole. Julian Thorne stood on her porch in a tuxedo, clearly having come straight from the gala. His dark hair, threaded with silver at the temples, looked slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. His expression, what she could see of it, was serious. She opened the door. Up close, Julian Thorne was taller than she remembered. 6'2", maybe. His eyes were grey, sharp and assessing in a way that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. But there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like controlled fury. "May I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered her home with the same confidence he probably brought to boardrooms and hostile takeovers, but his movements were careful, respectful of her space. His eyes took in the boxes, the half-packed remnants of her marriage, the evidence of systematic dismantling. "How are you?" he asked, and the question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that she almost laughed. "How am I?" She closed the door. "I was publicly humiliated on live television. My husband announced to the world that our daughter is a mistake he refuses to acknowledge. In approximately 8 weeks, I'm going to be a single mother while trying to navigate FDA approval and media scrutiny and the end of my marriage. How do you think I am?" Julian's jaw tightened. "Fair enough. I apologize for the question. Why are you here, Mr. Thorne?" He turned to face her fully. "Because what Marcus Chen did tonight was cruel and calculated. And because I have the resources to ensure it doesn't destroy everything you've built. I'm not looking for charity. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering strategy." He moved slightly closer, his voice dropping. "The media narrative tomorrow will be brutal. Pregnant researcher abandoned by husband. Questions about your judgment, your personal stability, your ability to lead a research team through critical trials. It won't matter that none of it's true. Perception becomes reality." Vivian sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. "So what are you proposing?" "I'm going to issue a statement tomorrow morning. The baby is mine. We've been together for months. Your marriage to Marcus ended quietly before this pregnancy. Tonight's confrontation was him lashing out at a relationship he couldn't accept." Vivian stared at him. "You're going to publicly lie about paternity? I'm going to protect your research and your reputation." He sat across from her, hands clasped between his knees. "Marcus humiliated you on international television. This levels the playing field and shifts the focus from abandoned pregnant researcher to accomplished woman in a stable relationship with someone who actually values her work. That's insane. The timeline won't even work. People will do the math and realize. People will believe what makes sense to them. A successful man pursuing a brilliant woman makes more sense than what actually happened." His grey eyes held hers steadily. "The alternative is months of invasive questions and attacks on your credibility at the exact moment we need FDA approval. Children's lives depend on this therapy getting approved. Dr. Cross. You know that better than anyone." She did know. She'd held those children. Watched them lose their hair and their strength and their hope. Watched her therapy give it back. Watched remission rates climb beyond anything conventional treatment could achieve. But this was asking too much. "Why would you do this?" she asked quietly. "Risk your reputation, your privacy, for someone you've met twice? Because your research will save thousands of children's lives. Because what happened tonight was an injustice I have the power to address." He paused, something flickering across his controlled features. "And because someone should have been there for you tonight, and no one was." The unexpected gentleness in his voice cracked something in her careful composure. Tears she'd been suppressing since the parking garage finally spilled over. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping at her face. "I don't usually fall apart in front of strangers." "You're not falling apart. You're processing trauma. There's a difference." Julian's voice remained steady, grounding. "And I'm not a stranger. I've been following your research for 3 years. I know your work ethic, your integrity, your commitment to those children. That's not a stranger, Dr. Cross. That's a colleague." She looked up at him through tears. "If we do this, if we actually go through with this lie, it has to be convincing. The medical community isn't stupid. They'll ask questions. I have excellent attorneys. They'll prepare statements that address timeline concerns. We'll control the narrative carefully. He leaned forward slightly. You don't have to decide tonight. Sleep on it. But my statement is releasing at 8 a.m. tomorrow whether you agree or not. I'd prefer to have your cooperation, but I'll protect your work either way. You'd lie for me without my permission? I'd protect research that matters. The rest is semantics. Vivian studied him. This man she barely knew, sitting in her living room at midnight, offering to upend his famously private life for her benefit. Billionaires didn't do things without calculation. There had to be an angle. What do you really get out of this, Mr. Thorne? A slight smile touched his lips. Besides the satisfaction of disrupting Marcus Chen's career trajectory, a functional gene therapy that will change medicine and generate significant return on our foundation's investment. That's enough. He stood to leave. Think about it. My card is on the table. Call me when you've decided. After he left, Vivian sat in the silence of her half-dismantled home. Marcus's boxes surrounded her like accusations. The baby kicked steadily against her ribs, a reminder that time was running out to make decisions. Her phone sat on the coffee table where she'd left it. Still silenced. Still accumulating messages she wasn't ready to face. She picked it up and pulled up Julian Thorne's contact information. Stared at his number for long minutes. At 2 a.m., she finally texted, "Okay. We'll do it your way." His response came immediately, as if he'd been waiting. "I'll have my attorneys contact you first thing in the morning. Get some rest, Dr. Cross. Tomorrow we take control of the narrative." She should have felt terrified. This was fraud, essentially. Lying about paternity. Building a house of cards that could collapse and bury them both. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Relief. At 8 a.m. exactly, Julian Thorne's statement hit every major news outlet simultaneously. Dr. Vivian Cross and I have been in a relationship for 6 months. The child she is carrying is mine. We chose to keep this private due to her pending divorce and the sensitivity of our professional collaboration through the Thorne Foundation. I am proud to support both her groundbreaking research and our growing family. Any further questions about our private life will not be answered, but I will state clearly that Dr. Cross is an exceptional scientist and mother-to-be, and I am honored to stand beside her. The media exploded. Speculation ran wild. How had they kept it secret? When had it started? What did this mean for the gene therapy trials? But the narrative shifted immediately. Instead of abandoned pregnant researcher, headlines read power couple in medical innovation and billionaire CEO claims paternity in medical gala scandal. By noon, Marcus had issued a retraction through his attorney. A carefully worded statement claiming he'd been emotional and mistaken and wished Dr. Cross well. Too late. The court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. Vivian watched it unfold from her couch, still in pajamas, phone muted except for messages from Julian's legal team. They walked her through talking points. Prepared responses to anticipated questions. Coordinated their stories with precision. At 3 p.m., her doorbell rang again. She opened it to find Julian Thorne standing on her porch in jeans and a button-down shirt, carrying grocery bags. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, too stunned to speak. He moved past her into the kitchen and began unpacking ingredients with surprising efficiency. "I took the liberty of researching nutritional requirements for third trimester pregnancy. Your refrigerator suggests you've been living on yogurt and what I can only describe as denial." Despite everything, Vivian laughed. A real laugh that bubbled up unexpected and genuine. "You researched pregnancy nutrition?" "I research everything that matters." He pulled out fresh vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains. "We need to discuss logistics. The media will expect to see us together." Carefully orchestrated appearances. Nothing intrusive, but enough to support the narrative. "This is really happening. Only if you consent." He turned to face her, expression serious. "Say the word, and I'll retract everything. I'll take the hit to my credibility and you can proceed however you choose. But I think this benefits us both. Your research stays protected. My foundation gets credit for supporting innovation that saves lives. Your daughter grows up without the stigma of her biological father's public rejection." "And you get what?" Vivian asked. "Pretend fatherhood?" Something indefinable passed across his features. Perhaps I get to help someone who deserved better than what happened to her. Over the next 3 weeks, their arrangement unfolded with the same precision Julian brought to all his business ventures. They met with attorneys who crafted ironclad statements about timeline and relationship progression. They coordinated schedules for public appearances. They established boundaries. Vivian's boundaries were clear from the start. The team at the research facility can't know yet. My leadership can't be undermined by office gossip about sleeping with the funding source. Julian nodded, seated across from her in his downtown office. Agreed. Professional boundaries remain in place at work. No preferential treatment. No public displays in professional settings. No changes to reporting structures. And my daughter. Vivian's hand moved protectively to her belly. We follow her lead on everything. I won't let her be used as a prop. His expression softened in a way she hadn't seen before. We follow her lead, he repeated. Children sense authenticity. If we're genuine with each other, she'll adapt to whatever evolves naturally. Their first public appearance was carefully choreographed. Dinner at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant known for its privacy but also for its proximity to certain photographers who could be relied upon for discreet documentation. Vivian wore a navy maternity dress that made her feel almost elegant despite her expanding waistline. Julian arrived at her door exactly on time, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt that made his grey eyes seem even more intense. "You look beautiful," he said, and the compliment felt genuine rather than performative. At the restaurant, they were seated at a corner table with soft lighting that felt intimate without being obvious. A photographer would catch them leaving, Julian had explained. Just one shot. Enough to confirm the relationship without seeming staged. But as dinner progressed, Vivian found herself forgetting about cameras and narratives. Julian asked about her research, but not in the superficial way most people did. He wanted details about the gene therapy mechanism, about the challenges she'd faced in trial design, about the family she'd worked with and what drove her to keep pushing when conventional wisdom said it was impossible. "You really care about this," she said, surprised. "Why wouldn't I?" He refilled her water glass. "I don't fund research as a tax write-off, Dr. Cross. I fund it because I believe science can solve problems that money alone can't touch." "Tell me about your family," she said, turning the tables. "The media knows you're a billionaire CEO, but that's about it. You guard your privacy like national security." A slight smile. "Because privacy is valuable. Once you lose it, you can't buy it back." He paused, considering. "My parents were comfortable but distant. They provided materially while remaining emotionally unavailable. I built Thorne Biomedical because I wanted to create something that mattered beyond profit margins. And does it matter to you?" "More than I expected." He met her eyes across the table. "Especially when I see research like yours actually working. Children who should have died are thriving. That matters more than any stock price." The conversation flowed naturally from there. She told him about growing up with parents who fought constantly, how she'd escaped into books and science, how healing had become her art form, fixing broken things because she couldn't fix her own childhood. He shared pieces of himself too. The loneliness of being brilliant and wealthy and always wondering if people valued him or his resources. The weight of expectations and the isolation that came with success. When they left the restaurant, his hand settled naturally at the small of her back. Protective. Convincing. The photographer caught them in that moment, and the image would run in People magazine with the caption "New parents to be enjoy date night." But what stayed with Vivian wasn't the performance. It was the way the conversation had felt genuine. Like maybe this arrangement was building something real beneath the necessary fiction. The following week brought her monthly doctor's appointment. Julian had asked if she wanted him there. For appearances, he'd clarified. "We should be seen together in medical settings. But only if you're comfortable." She'd agreed, expecting it to feel awkward and transactional. Instead, when the ultrasound tech squirted cold gel on her belly and the baby's image appeared on screen, she watched Julian's face transform with genuine wonder. "Is that," he started, then stopped. His voice had gone rough. "Is that her hand?" The tech smiled. "It is. And if you watch here, you can see her heartbeat." Julian leaned closer to the monitor, completely absorbed. "She's beautiful." The tech glanced at Vivian with approval, clearly assuming this was the proud father having a typical response. But Vivian saw something else in Julian's expression. This wasn't performance. This was authentic or at seeing life taking shape. "Can you tell if she's healthy?" he asked the tech. "All the measurements look good. Everything looks perfect." The tech printed out images. "She's measuring right on track. Strong heartbeat. Good movement. What about DR? Cross?" Julian turned his attention to Vivian. "Her blood pressure, her iron levels, everything we discussed last week?" Vivian blinked. "We didn't discuss anything last week. I may have called your doctor's office," he admitted. "Asked what I should be monitoring. They mentioned you were slightly anemic at your last visit." The tech laughed. "Sounds like you've got a keeper, DR. Cross." Most partners can barely remember appointment dates. After the appointment, walking to their cars in the medical complex parking lot, Vivian turned to Julian. "You called my doctor's office? I wanted to understand what to watch for. What might indicate problems." He looked almost embarrassed. "I research everything that matters, remember? She's not your responsibility, Julian. We're doing this for optics and to protect the research. You don't have to actually study prenatal care." He stopped walking, looked at her with those intense grey eyes. "What if I want to?" Before she could respond, her phone rang. Her research coordinator, calling about timeline adjustments for the FDA submission. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them. That night, Julian appeared at her door at 10 p.m. carrying bags from the hardware store. "What are you doing here? You mentioned the crib still needed assembly." "I brought tools. I can hire someone to do that." "I'm sure you can." He moved past her into the house. "But I'm here now, and I prefer building things properly." She watched him work in what would become the nursery. This billionaire CEO on her floor, reading instruction manuals with the same focus he probably brought to merger negotiations. He changed out of his suit into jeans and a t-shirt that revealed surprisingly muscular arms. "Why are you being so careful with me?" she asked finally. His hands stilled on the crib piece he was attaching. "What do you mean?" "This whole thing. The arrangement, the public appearances, now assembling furniture at 10 p.m. You maintain perfect boundaries, but you're always here. Always showing up. Why?" He set down the Allen wrench and turned to face her. "Because you've been handled roughly enough. And because I prefer building things properly. Rushing creates structural weaknesses." "Are we talking about the crib or something else?" A slight smile touched his lips. "Maybe both." She sat on the floor across from him, her back against the wall. "Tell me the truth, Julian. What are you getting out of this arrangement that you're not saying?" He was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. "Honestly, a sense of purpose beyond profit margins. The chance to be part of something real instead of watching life happen through boardroom windows." His eyes met hers. "The possibility that showing up for someone might matter more than any business deal I've ever closed." Her breath caught. This was supposed to be transactional. Protection for her research in exchange for positive press for his foundation. But the way he looked at her, the way he'd studied ultrasound images and researched pregnancy nutrition and appeared at her door with tools, suggested something deeper was taking root. "Julian," she started. "You don't have to say anything." He returned to the crib assembly. "I'm not asking for anything beyond what we agreed to. I just wanted you to know that this," he gestured around the nursery, "showing up, it's not obligation. It's choice." After he finished and left, Vivian stood in the completed nursery running her fingers over the crib he'd built. Sturdy. Carefully constructed. Safe. She was 34 weeks pregnant when her water broke. It was a Tuesday afternoon. She'd been reviewing FDA approval documents at her dining table, making notes on final submission requirements, when she felt the unmistakable gush of fluid. For exactly 30 seconds, panic fluttered in her chest. Then her training kicked in. She called her doula, called her doctor, grabbed the hospital bag she'd packed 3 weeks early because she was nothing if not prepared. And then, after a moment's hesitation, she called Julian. He answered on the first ring. "DR. Cross. My water just broke. I'm heading to Mercy General. I'm in Boston. I can be there in 3 hours." You don't have to, she started, then gasped as the first contraction hit. Stronger than she'd expected. This was happening fast. I'm already heading to my car. Which hospital? Mercy General. But Julian, you really don't need to. I'll be there. The certainty in his voice steadied her. Okay. Vivian. His voice gentled. You're going to be amazing. Call me when you're settled and I'll keep you updated on my ETA. The ambulance arrived within minutes. EMTs helped her into the back while neighbors watched with curiosity from their porches. She texted her doula that she was en route. Texted her research team that she'd be out of pocket. Texted her mother in Portland not to worry but the baby was coming early. At the hospital, they settled her into a birthing suite. Labor was progressing faster than normal for a first pregnancy. Already 4 centimeters dilated and contractions coming every 5 minutes. Her doula arrived and helped her into a hospital gown. Coached her through breathing techniques. But Vivian found herself watching the clock, tracking Julian's journey from Boston. He was just a friend helping with appearances, she told herself. This wasn't his responsibility. But she wanted him there anyway. At 6 centimeters, transition hitting hard, the door to her suite opened and Julian burst in, still wearing a suit, tie loosened, hair disheveled from what had clearly been a frantic journey. I'm here. He was at her bedside immediately, his hand finding hers. I'm right here. You're late, she gasped between contractions. Traffic was terrible. His voice carried forced lightness even as his eyes showed genuine concern. Won't happen again, I promise. Despite the pain radiating through her body, she laughed. The next hours blurred together. Contractions building in intensity. Julian staying at her shoulder, becoming her anchor through the storm. He breathed with her. Counted through contractions. Advocated with nurses when she needed ice chips or wanted the lights dimmed. You've done this before, she observed during a brief respite. No. He offered her water with a straw. But I researched what might help while driving here. There's remarkable consensus on the importance of supportive birthing partners. You researched labor support techniques on the way to the hospital? I told you. I research everything that matters. Another contraction claimed her attention, and the world narrowed to sensation and survival and Julian's steady voice telling her she was doing beautifully. She was so strong, almost there. At 9 centimeters, her doctor checked her progress and smiled. Time to meet your baby, Dr. Cross. What followed was the most intense experience of Vivian's life. Every nerve ending focused on the overwhelming urge to push. To bring this life into the world. Julian stayed at her shoulder, his hand gripping hers, his voice a quiet constant. You're doing beautifully. So strong. Almost there. She pushed through pain that felt like being torn apart and rebuilt. Pushed through exhaustion and fear and desperate hope. And then, at 3:47 a.m., with a final overwhelming effort, her daughter entered the world. The baby's cry pierced the room. Indignant and strong and absolutely perfect. It's a girl, the doctor confirmed unnecessarily, lifting the squirming newborn. A beautiful, healthy girl. The nurse placed the baby on Vivian's chest. Vernix covered and absolutely perfect. Time stopped as Vivian beheld her daughter's face for the first time. Tiny features scrunched in protest at being evicted from comfortable darkness. Dark hair plastered to her head. Eyes squeezed shut against the bright lights. Hi, baby girl. Vivian's voice broke on a sob. Hi, I'm your mama. I've got you. I've always got you. She became vaguely aware of Julian stepping back, giving her this sacred moment while remaining close enough to matter. When she finally looked up, his face was wet with unashamed tears. Do you want to meet her? The words came out without thought. Uncertainty flickered across his features. Are you sure? I'm sure. He approached like approaching something holy. The nurse helped transfer the swaddled newborn into his arms, and Vivian watched transformation ripple across Julian's face. Wonder and terror and fierce protectiveness all at once. Hello, little one. His voice was rough with emotion. You are so loved. So wanted. So absolutely perfect. The baby squinted up at him, her tiny face somehow seeming to study this new person holding her with such reverence. What will you call her? He asked softly. Vivian had considered many names during pregnancy. Classic names. Family names. Names that meant strength or wisdom or grace. But looking at her daughter now, born of chaos yet entering the world with such determined strength, only one seemed right. Hope. Hope Elena Cross. Julian's eyes met hers over the infant's head, and something profound passed between them. Understanding. Gratitude. Connection that transcended their arrangement. Hope, he repeated, looking down at the baby. Perfect. Later, after Hope had been weighed and measured and returned to Vivian's arms for her first feeding, Julian settled into the uncomfortable hospital recliner. He'd refused to leave despite Vivian's insistence that he didn't need to stay. You should get some rest, she said. You have a company to run. The company will survive a day without me. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. You shouldn't be alone right now. I have nurses checking on me every hour. That's not the same. She didn't argue further, too exhausted to push. Within an hour, Julian had fallen asleep in the chair, his tall frame folded uncomfortably but his face peaceful. Vivian watched him sleep while Hope nursed contentedly. This man who'd appeared in her life at her lowest moment. Who'd claimed her daughter without hesitation. Who researched pregnancy nutrition and assembled cribs and stayed through 16 hours of labor because he'd chosen to show up. What are we doing? She whispered to Hope. What is this becoming? Hope's dark eyes blinked up at her with newborn wisdom, offering no answers. The first week home was a blur of midnight feedings and diaper changes and overwhelming love for this tiny person who'd taken over every moment of Vivian's existence. Julian appeared daily. Sometimes with groceries. Sometimes with research updates. Always with steady presence that had become essential to her new normal. He'd learned to change diapers with the same focused precision he brought to board meetings. Mastered the swaddle technique after watching 3 YouTube videos. Held Hope for hours while Vivian showered or caught fragments of sleep. You don't have to keep coming, she said one evening, watching him rock Hope with practiced ease. What if I'm not here out of obligation? Then why? His eyes met hers over Hope's downy head. Because when I look at her, when I look at both of you, I see the family I didn't know I was missing. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to fully explore. But that night, as Hope slept in her carefully assembled crib and Julian dozed on Vivian's couch after staying too late, Vivian understood something fundamental had shifted. This arrangement they'd built for protection and optics had become something real. Something that felt like home. She was folding tiny onuses in the nursery when her phone rang 3 weeks later. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Media requests still came sporadically, and she'd learned to ignore unfamiliar callers. But something made her pick up. Dr. Cross. This is Richard Temple, attorney for Dr. Marcus Chen. Her blood ran cold. What do you want? My client wishes to discuss custody arrangements for his biological daughter. The world tilted violently beneath her feet. Excuse me. Dr. Chen has filed for paternity testing and joint custody. We'll be serving papers tomorrow. I'm calling as a professional courtesy to give you advance notice. Her hand gripped the dresser for support. He has no rights. He publicly rejected her. He's had no contact since. Biology doesn't lie, Dr. Cross. And the law is clear about parental rights. We'll see you in court. The line went dead. Vivian stood frozen, Hope babbling contentedly in her crib, completely unaware that the ground was crumbling beneath them. She called Julian. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. He answered immediately. What's wrong? Marcus. The words tumbled out. His attorney just called. His filing for custody. Paternity testing. He wants her, Julian. After everything, he wants to take her. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, Julian walked through her door and pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against his chest, terror finally breaking through. He can force paternity testing, she whispered. The court will see the timeline. They'll know about the lie. They'll know you're not actually her father. Julian's arms tightened around her. Then we tell the truth. The whole truth. That I claimed paternity to protect you. That I functioned as her father because I chose to. That family is built through presence, not biology. A judge might not see it that way. Then we find one who does. He pulled back to look at her, his grey eyes fierce. Vivian, I meant every word I said to that attorney weeks ago. I don't care what DNA says. I'm her father in every way that matters. And I will fight for that right with everything I have. In her crib, Hope began to cry. Vivian moved automatically to pick her up, but Julian got there first. He lifted the infant with practiced ease, murmuring soft reassurances. Hey, little one. It's okay. Daddy's here. The baby settled immediately, her tiny fist curling around his finger. Watching them together, Vivian felt fierce protectiveness surge through her. This man had chosen them, had shown up every single day without obligation or biological imperative, had become Hope's father in every meaningful way. Whatever came next, whatever legal battle Marcus was preparing to wage, they would face it together. Because Julian Thorne had taught her something fundamental about family. It wasn't about blood or biology or legal documents. It was about showing up. Day after day. Choice after choice. And he'd been showing up from the beginning. The custody papers arrived by courier the next morning. Vivian stood in her doorway holding the manila envelope while Hope slept peacefully in her bassinet, completely unaware that her biological father had just declared war. Julian appeared within the hour. He'd called his attorney before even getting in the car. Catherine Winters met them at Julian's downtown office. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and formidable, with a reputation for winning impossible family law cases. She spread the papers across the conference table. Marcus is claiming parental rights based on biological connection, she said, scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. His requesting court-ordered paternity testing, joint custody, and his challenging Mr. Thorne's claim of fatherhood. Can he do that? Vivian asked. Just show up after months of silence and demand access to her? Unfortunately, yes. Catherine's voice was gentle but honest. Courts favor biological parents unless there's significant evidence of unfitness or abandonment. And while his public rejection was appalling, his attorneys will argue it was said in emotional distress, not genuine intent to abandon. But he did abandon her. Julian's voice carried controlled fury. 7 months of zero contact. Zero support. Zero interest until now. Which we'll document extensively. Catherine pulled out a legal pad. First, we establish timeline of abandonment. Second, we document Mr. Thorne's consistent presence in Hope's life. Third, we demonstrate that disrupting the bond she has with Julian would harm her development and stability. Will that be enough? Vivian's hand trembled slightly. Her coffee cup clattered against the saucer. Catherine looked between them. Typically, courts favor biological parents unless there's clear unfitness. But this case has unique elements. The public rejection. The complete absence for 7 months. The established bond with Mr. Thorne. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. And then there's public opinion. Public opinion doesn't decide custody cases, Julian noted. No. But it creates context. Catherine opened her laptop and turned the screen toward them. This started trending an hour ago. The hashtag read, "Where were you, Marcus?" Underneath, millions of posts from people sharing stories of absent biological parents contrasted with the non-biological figures who'd shown up for them. Biology is an accident. Fatherhood is a choice, read one viral post with over 2 million likes. My real dad is the man who taught me to ride a bike, not the man who donated DNA, posted a well-known actor who'd been adopted. Blood doesn't make you a father. Love does. Team Vivian. Parenting forums erupted with outrage over Marcus's sudden reappearance. Child psychologists weighed in on morning shows discussing attachment theory and the harm of disrupting established bonds. The public is firmly on your side, Catherine observed. That creates pressure on the judge to consider broader implications. Vivian scrolled through the responses, stunned. I never expected this kind of support. People recognize authenticity, Julian said quietly. They see a man who rejected his child when it was inconvenient, suddenly appearing when there might be advantage. Catherine closed her laptop. We'll need to document everything. Every doctor's appointment Mr. Thorne attended. Every milestone. Every financial contribution to Hope's well-being. We build a case based on consistent presence versus opportunistic interest. Over the following days, they gathered evidence. Medical records listing Julian as emergency contact. Receipts for everything from diapers to the custom nursery furniture. Testimony from Vivian's doula about Julian's presence during labor. Statements from neighbors who'd seen him arriving daily with groceries and supplies. The pediatrician agreed to testify that Julian attended every appointment, asked informed questions, implemented care recommendations with precision. The night nurse from Hope's first week home offered a statement about Julian arriving at 2 a.m. with supplies after a panicked text about colic. Vivian's research assistant described seeing him at the lab with Hope in a carrier, conducting conference calls while soothing the infant to sleep. That's not fatherhood, Marcus's attorney would argue during deposition. That's an employee following orders from his research director. But the evidence told a different story. Julian had been there for first smiles and first laughs. Had walked the floors at 3 a.m. when Hope wouldn't settle. Had researched sleep schedules and developmental milestones with the same intensity he brought to pharmaceutical acquisitions. He knew Hope preferred being held upright after feeding. That she calmed to his voice reading financial reports. That she was fascinated by lights and startled at loud noises and had started recognizing his face at 6 weeks. Marcus knew none of this. 2 weeks before the custody hearing, Vivian received a message from Patricia Webb, the host of the original morning show where Marcus had humiliated her. Dr. Cross, I'm deeply sorry about the custody situation. Our show would like to offer you a platform to tell your side of the story. No ambushes this time. Your terms entirely. Vivian showed the message to Julian and Catherine. It's your decision, Julian said carefully. But a public statement might strengthen our position. Tell your story, Catherine encouraged. Let the world see the truth of your family. 3 days later, Vivian sat in the same studio where her world had shattered 8 months earlier. But this time, Julian sat beside her, their hands linked between the chairs. Hope remained backstage with a trusted caregiver, visible on a monitor. Rebecca Chen, who'd replaced Patricia as host, opened with compassion. Dr. Cross, Marcus Chen is suing for custody of Hope. How do you respond to his claim that he's ready to be a father now? Vivian's voice was steady and clear. By asking where he's been for the past 8 months. Where was he at 3 a.m. feedings? Where was he for first smiles, first laughs, first everything? Where was he when Hope had colic and we spent 3 nights monitoring her temperature? Where was he on her first Thanksgiving? Her first Christmas? On any single day of her life? He claims biological rights, Rebecca prompted gently. Biology gave him an opportunity that he explicitly rejected. Vivian met the camera directly. On this very network, he stated, and I quote, I never wanted this baby. You trapped me with this pregnancy and I'm done pretending I want to be a father. Those were his exact words while I was 7 months pregnant. You can't reject a child on international television and then claim parental rights when it's convenient. Rebecca turned to Julian. Mr. Thorne, you have no biological connection to Hope, yet you've raised her since birth. What motivated you to take on this responsibility? It was never a responsibility. Julian's professional composure softened with genuine emotion. It was a privilege. I fell in love with Hope the moment Dr. Cross placed her in my arms in that hospital room. Not from obligation or duty, but because she's extraordinary. Smart, curious, joyful. Like her mother. The timeline suggests you were involved in Dr. Cross's life before Hope's birth, Rebecca noted. Was this a rescue mission? A white knight scenario? Absolutely not. Julian's voice was firm. I approached Dr. Cross initially because of her professional accomplishments. Her gene therapy research was exactly what our foundation wanted to support. Her personal strength during a difficult time simply confirmed what I already knew about her character. And your relationship evolved from there. Vivian smiled, the first genuine warmth she'd shown. Gradually. Respectfully. Julian never presumed anything. He simply showed up consistently, thoughtfully, for both of us. While Marcus was nowhere to be found. Rebecca leaned forward. What would you say to people who question whether Mr. Thorne has the right to claim fatherhood without biological connection? I'd say watch him with her. Vivian's voice grew passionate. Watch how he knows exactly how she likes to be held. How he's memorized her feeding schedule and sleep patterns. How he researches every developmental milestone and implements pediatrician recommendations before I even ask. How he rearranged board meetings to be at her 4-month checkup. That's not obligation. That's love. The interview concluded with footage they'd authorized. Julian holding Hope, the infant gazing up at him with clear recognition and trust. Hope reaching for him with both arms, babbling. Julian's face transformed with unguarded joy as he lifted her. The image spoke volumes that no legal argument could match. The interview went viral within hours. Legal experts dissected Marcus's chances on cable news. Most concluded his case faced significant challenges given the circumstances. Child development specialists appeared on morning shows emphasizing potential harm of disrupting Hope's secure attachment to Julian. Marcus's legal team released a statement claiming he'd matured and recognized the importance of fatherhood. The explanation fell flat against the mountain of evidence documenting his absence. But Marcus wasn't finished. 3 days after the interview, as Vivian reviewed exhibition proposals in her home office while Hope napped, her doorbell rang. She checked the security camera Julian had installed. Marcus stood on her porch. Her first instinct was to call the police. Her second was to call Julian. But something made her open the door with the chain still attached. "We need to talk," Marcus said. His voice carried forced calm. "About this circus you've created." "I've created?" Her voice was ice. "You rejected our daughter on live television." "I'm simply protecting her from that rejection." "Let me in, Vivian. We can discuss this like adults. Anything you have to say can be said through attorneys." His expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Fighting this publicly, turning Hope into a media spectacle. Just let me see her. Let's work out shared custody quietly." "Why?" Vivian kept her voice steady. "Why now, Marcus? For 8 months you wanted nothing to do with her. What changed?" "I made a mistake." His tone shifted to something smoother, more practiced. "I was scared, overwhelmed. But I've had time to think, to understand what fatherhood means. Fatherhood means showing up. You didn't. I'm trying to show up now. 8 months too late." She started closing the door. "All communication goes through our attorneys." His foot blocked the door. "You're letting that billionaire play house with my daughter. Do you really think he cares about her? About you? This is a game to him, Vivian. A charity project. You're wrong. But even if you weren't, he's been more of a father in 8 months than you've been in her entire existence. I have rights." His voice rose slightly. "Biological rights that no judge will ignore. And Julian has something you'll never have. Her love. Her trust. Her recognition when he walks in the room. She knows one father, Marcus. And it's not you." She closed the door. Locked it. Stood with her back against the wood while her heart pounded. Her phone was already ringing. "Julian." "I'm outside," his voice said. "I saw Marcus's car. Are you okay?" She opened the door to find Julian on her porch, Marcus retreating to his vehicle with visible anger. "I'm fine." She let Julian inside. He wanted to negotiate privately. Shared custody. Acting like the last 8 months didn't happen. Julian's jaw tightened. He's desperate. "That's good for our case." He said, "You're playing house. That this is a game to you." Julian turned to face her fully. "Look at me, Vivian. Do you believe that?" She studied his face. The genuine concern in his grey eyes. The protective tension in his shoulders. The way he dropped everything to come when he thought she might need him. "No. I don't believe that." "Good. Because every moment I spend with you and Hope is the most real thing in my life." Something shifted between them. The careful boundaries they'd maintained, the professional distance, suddenly felt artificial. "Julian," she started. Hope's cry came through the baby monitor. Awake from her nap and demanding attention. The moment broke, but the awareness remained. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in late September. Hope was 8 months old. The courtroom filled with media representatives, child advocates, and observers drawn by the case's implications for non-biological parents. Judge Martha Williams presided. 62 years old with steel grey hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd spent 30 years in family court and had seen every variation of custody dispute imaginable. Her opening remarks set the tone. This court's primary concern is the well-being of the minor child, Hope Elena Cross. All other considerations are secondary. Biology, parental rights, public opinion. None of it matters as much as what serves this child's best interests. Marcus's attorney presented first. Edward Carlyle was in his 50s. Expensive suit, practice charm. He built his case on biological connection and Marcus's claimed transformation. Your Honor, Dr. Chen made regrettable statements during a moment of shock and emotional distress. He stood before the judge, hands spread in reasonable appeal. But he spent the intervening months working on himself. Attending therapy. Preparing financially and emotionally to be the father his daughter deserves. Biology is not trivial. It's the foundation of family. This child deserves to know her biological father. He called Marcus to the stand. Marcus wore a navy suit that made him look professional and earnest. His testimony was carefully rehearsed. I made terrible mistakes, he said, voice heavy with apparent regret. I was overwhelmed by the pregnancy, scared of fatherhood, and I lashed out in the worst possible way. But I've done the work to change. I've been in therapy twice a week. I've read books on child development. I've prepared a nursery in my home. I'm ready to be Hope's father now. Now, Carlyle repeated. After 8 months of absence. People change, Your Honor. I'm asking for a chance to prove I have. Catherine's cross-examination was surgical. Dr. Chen, what is Hope's current sleep schedule? Marcus hesitated. I believe most 8-month-olds sleep through the night. That wasn't the question. What time does Hope go to bed? When does she typically wake? I don't have those specific details yet, but what foods has she started eating? Standard baby foods, I assume. You assume. Catherine's voice was mild but devastating. You don't know. What's her pediatrician's name? I don't have that information with me. Does Hope have any allergies you're aware of? Not that I know of. What's her favorite toy? Silence. What songs does she like to hear before bed? What position does she prefer to be held in? What makes her laugh? Marcus's face reddened. I haven't had the opportunity to learn those details because I've been prevented from seeing her. You've been prevented from nothing. Catherine moved closer. You chose not to be present. You chose not to call, not to send support, not to ask a single question about this child's well-being for 8 months. And now you want a judge to disrupt the only family she's ever known so you can have the opportunity to learn what you should have been learning from day one. Objection. Carlyle stood. Argumentative. Sustained. But make your point, Ms. Winters. Catherine nodded. No further questions. Julian's case came next. Catherine called witnesses systematically, each one adding layers to the picture of Julian's consistent presence. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Hope's pediatrician, took the stand first. Mr. Thorne has attended every single appointment, she testified. He asks detailed questions about developmental milestones. He implements recommendations immediately. When Hope had reflux issues at 2 months, he researched formula options and brought a list of questions to our next visit. That's not performative behavior. That's genuine parental engagement. Have you ever met Dr. Chen? Never. Not once in 8 months. Margaret Hayes, the night nurse Vivian had hired for the first 2 weeks, described Julian arriving at 2 a.m. with supplies after a panicked text about colic. He didn't have to come, she said. Dr. Cross had me there for support. But he showed up anyway because he wanted to learn how to help. He stayed up with us, learning techniques to soothe the baby. That's dedication you can't fake. Vivian's research assistant testified about Julian bringing Hope to the lab in a carrier, conducting conference calls while gently rocking her to sleep. The baby recognized his voice, she said. She'd settle when she heard him talking, even if she couldn't see him. That's not something that happens overnight. That's months of consistent presence building a bond. Then Catherine called Vivian. Dr. Cross, when did your relationship with Mr. Thorne begin? Vivian sat in the witness box, acutely aware of every eye in the courtroom. The night of the Hartwell ceremony. He came to my house to offer protection from the media storm Marcus had created. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. So Mr. Thorne's initial claim of a 6-month relationship was false? Yes. Vivian's voice remained steady. He lied to protect my reputation and my research at a critical time. But everything that's happened since has been truth. He didn't have to show up. He chose to. Every single day for 8 months. Describe Mr. Thorne's relationship with Hope. She loves him. Vivian's voice softened. She lights up when he walks in the room. She reaches for him when she's upset. She falls asleep on his chest. She knows his voice, his smell, his heartbeat. To her, he's not Mr. Thorne or a benefactor or a family friend. His daddy. The only father she's ever known. And Dr. Chen's role? Marcus rejected Hope on international television before she was born. Vivian met the judge's gaze directly. He's had no contact since. Not a phone call. Not a text message. Not a single question about her health or development or needs. To Hope, he's a stranger. Forcing her to know him now would be traumatic, not beneficial. Thank you, Dr. Cross. Carlyle's cross-examination tried to paint Vivian as vindictive, using Julian's resources to exclude Marcus. But she remained calm, redirecting every question back to Hope's needs rather than adult grievances. Finally, Catherine called Julian. He took the stand in a charcoal suit, looking every inch the billionaire CEO. But when he spoke about Hope, that polished exterior cracked to reveal something raw and honest. Mr. Thorne, you have no biological connection to Hope. Why did you claim paternity? Because someone needed to be her father. Julian's voice carried through the silent courtroom. And from the moment I held her, still covered in vernix and squinting at the world like she was trying to figure it all out, I knew I wanted to be that person. Even knowing she wasn't genetically yours. Genetics are chance, your honor. Julian turned to address the judge directly. Fatherhood is choice. I chose Hope. I choose her every morning when I wake up and every night when I check on her before bed and every moment in between. Describe your daily involvement in Hope's care. I know she goes to bed at 7:30 and wakes around 6 a.m., though she's been sleeping through the night for 3 weeks now. Julian's voice filled with quiet pride. She's eating solid foods. Loves sweet potatoes, tolerates green beans, will throw carrots if you're not careful. She has 2 teeth coming in on the bottom, which is why she's been more fussy than usual and likes chewing on cold washcloths. Her favorite toy is a stuffed elephant her mother bought. She likes to be held upright after feeding or she gets uncomfortable. She laughs when you make funny faces but startles at loud noises. She started pulling herself up on furniture, so we've been baby-proofing everything at the appropriate height. The courtroom was silent. She's beginning to babble consonant sounds. Lots of DA and MA sounds. I read to her every night, usually financial reports because the sound of my voice matters more than content at this age. She falls asleep on my chest during conference calls. When I travel for business, which I've minimized significantly, I video call twice daily to maintain connection. He paused, emotion roughening his voice. I know all of this not because I studied a manual or because someone told me. I know it because I've been there. Every day. Every milestone. Every moment of her life. That's not biology. That's fatherhood. Catherine let the words hang in the air before asking her next question. Mr. Thorne, you're a billionaire with demands on your time that most people can't imagine. You could hire a fleet of nannies. Why do you show up personally? Because she's not a responsibility to be delegated. Julian's grey eyes were steady. She's my daughter. And being her father is the most important thing I'll ever do. More important than any merger, any profit margin, any business success. When I look at her, I don't see an obligation or a charity project. I see the child who made me understand what actually matters in life. No further questions. Carlyle approached for cross-examination, clearly looking to undermine Julian's credibility. Mr. Thorne, you've claimed you're not doing this for business reasons, yet your foundation funds Dr. Cross's research. Isn't there a conflict of interest? My foundation funds groundbreaking medical research. Julian's voice remained level. Dr. Cross's work would receive funding regardless of our personal relationship because it saves children's lives. One has nothing to do with the other. You're a businessman. Everything is transactional for you. Not everything. Some things are sacred. Like what? Family. The simple word carried weight. Real family, built through choice and presence. That's not transactional. You expect this court to believe a billionaire CEO suddenly developed paternal instincts for a child that isn't his? I expect this court to recognize that biology doesn't determine who can love a child. Julian leaned forward slightly. I was in the delivery room when Hope was born. I held Dr. Cross's hand through 16 hours of labor. I was the first person besides her mother to hold her. I've been at every pediatric appointment, every milestone, every 3 a.m. feeding when she wouldn't settle. I haven't missed a single day of her life. Can Dr. Chen say the same? Carlyle had no response. The testimony phase concluded. Judge Williams reviewed documents while the courtroom waited in tense silence. Finally, she removed her reading glasses and looked between the two men. I've considered extensive evidence, testimony from numerous witnesses, and most importantly, the best interests of Hope Cross. She turned to Marcus first. Dr. Chen, you are Hope's biological father. That is genetic fact. But fatherhood, as has been eloquently stated in this courtroom, is more than genetics. Her voice grew stern. You publicly rejected this child before her birth in the cruelest possible manner. You have made no effort to establish a relationship, provide support, or participate in her life for 8 months. You filed for custody only after learning of Mr. Thorne's intention to formally adopt. The timing suggests opportunism rather than genuine parental concern. She turned to Julian and Vivian. Mr. Thorne, you have been present for every meaningful moment of this child's life. You have provided financial, emotional, and physical support without biological obligation. Ms. Cross, you have built a stable, loving home for your daughter with clear boundaries and consistent care. Judge Williams set down her papers. Dr. Chen, your petition for custody is denied. Marcus's face went white. Furthermore, I am terminating your parental rights based on abandonment and the child's best interests. Carlyle stood abruptly. Your Honor, I'm not finished. The judge's voice was steel. Mr. Thorne, Dr. Cross has petitioned for you to formally adopt Hope. Given the overwhelming evidence of your commitment and the child's clear attachment to you, I am granting this adoption. The courtroom erupted. Reporters typing frantically. Observers whispering. Marcus sitting in stunned silence. Hope Cross will become Hope Cross Thorne. Judge Williams continued over the noise. This child knows one father, the man who has raised her with love and consistency from her first breath. That relationship merits full legal protection. Biology does not supersede presence when biology has been actively rejected. She brought her gavel down. This case is closed. Dr. Chen, you had every opportunity to be this child's father. You chose otherwise. The consequences of that choice are yours to bear. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Vivian collapsed against Julian, tears of relief streaming down her face. His arms came around her, solid and sure. She's safe, Vivian whispered. She's really safe. She always was, Julian murmured into her hair. We just made it official. Reporters shouted questions from every direction. Cameras flashed. Security created a corridor toward their waiting car. One reporter's voice carried above the others. Mr. Thorne, how do you feel about the ruling? Julian paused, turning to address the media directly. I feel grateful, humbled, and more committed than ever to being the father Hope deserves. His hand found Vivian's. Family isn't determined by genetics. It's built through daily choices. Through showing up. Through love that isn't obligated but freely given. They drove home in relative silence, both processing the enormity of what had just happened. At home, they relieved the babysitter and Julian immediately went to Hope's crib. The baby had been napping but woke at the sound of familiar voices. Her face lit up when she saw him. Arms reaching. Making the happy sounds she reserved for people she loved. Hey, little one. Julian lifted her gently. We had quite a day. Hope patted his face with both hands, babbling emphatically. I know. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. You have no idea what just happened. But you're mine now. Officially, legally, permanently mine. Watching them together, Vivian felt something in her chest unlock. They'd built this family from necessity and protection. But somewhere along the way, it had become real. More real than anything in her life had ever been. That evening, after Hope was asleep, they sat together on Vivian's couch. The same place they'd planned strategy and boundaries and careful public appearances. "We did it," Vivian said quietly. "We did." Julian's arm rested along the back of the couch, not quite touching her. "She's safe. Protected. No one can take her from us now. Us." The word hung between them. "Julian." She turned to face him. "We need to talk about what this is. What we are." His expression grew carefully neutral. "What do you want us to be?" "I don't know." She laughed shakily. "We started this as a business arrangement. Protection for my research and your foundation's reputation. But somewhere along the way, it became real," he finished. "I know. I've known for months. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you'd been through enough." He shifted to face her fully. "I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel like this arrangement came with expectations beyond what we agreed to. And now you're legally my daughter's mother and I'm legally her father. We're bound together regardless of what happens between us personally. So I can finally be honest without worrying I'm manipulating the situation." Her breath caught. "Honest about what?" "About the fact that I love you." His voice was steady, certain. "Not because you're Hope's mother or because of the arrangement or because it's convenient. I love you because you're brilliant and strong and you make me want to be better than I am. Because watching you with Hope is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Because somewhere between assembling cribs and researching pregnancy nutrition, you became the most important person in my life." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too. I think I have for months, but I was so scared." "Of what?" "That this was too good to be real. That you'd wake up one day and realize you'd signed up for someone else's life and responsibilities. That I was just a project you'd lose interest in." Julian reached up to brush tears from her face with his thumb. "You're not a project. You're the woman I want to spend my life with. You and Hope. Our family." "Our family," she repeated, testing the words. "If you'll have me. Not as an arrangement or for appearances, but real. Partners. In parenting and in everything else." She answered by kissing him. It was different from the careful, camera-ready kisses they'd shared for public consumption. This was real. Deep and honest and full of months of restrained longing finally released. When they pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly. Not rush because we've been living like a family already. We have been living like a family. I know. But I want you to be sure. To choose this, choose me, without the pressure of circumstances forcing your hand." Over the following months, they dated. It felt absurd in some ways. They shared a daughter. He had clothes at her house. They coordinated schedules and parenting decisions and doctor's appointments. But Julian insisted on traditional courtship. Dinners where they talked about dreams instead of logistics. Walks in the park pushing Hope's stroller while discussing art and science and philosophy. Late-night conversations after Hope was asleep where they learned each other's histories and hopes. He was patient and thoughtful and intentional in ways that made Vivian fall more deeply in love with every passing day. Hope thrived. At 11 months, she took her first steps during a Sunday brunch at Vivian's house. Julian had been reading on the couch while Hope pulled herself up on the coffee table. She'd been cruising along furniture for weeks, gaining confidence. Then she let go. 3 wobbly steps across open space before launching herself toward Julian with complete faith he'd catch her. He did, scooping her up with a shout of joy. "That's it, Hope. You did it." Vivian had been in the kitchen and came running with her phone. "Do it again. I need to record this." Hope, emboldened by success, took 6 more steps before collapsing into giggles. "She associates every achievement with you," Vivian observed, watching Julian swing Hope in celebration. "You're her safe landing place." Something vulnerable flashed in his eyes. "You've allowed me to be. That's your gift." That evening, after Hope was asleep, they stood together in the nursery doorway. "I want to ask you something," Julian said quietly, "but I want you to know there's no pressure. If you're not ready or if you don't want this, it doesn't change anything about our family. Her heart began to race. Ask me. Not yet. He smiled. Soon. But I need to plan it properly. She didn't push, but anticipation hummed beneath every interaction after that. The proposal came 2 weeks later. Julian had arranged for Hope to have a special museum adventure with a trusted caregiver. When Vivian arrived home from the research facility, she found her house transformed. Soft music played throughout. Delicate lights strung across the back patio. The dining table set with elegant simplicity. Julian emerged from the kitchen in jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. What's all this? Dinner. He pulled out her chair. And a conversation I've been planning for weeks. The meal was perfect. Her favorite foods prepared with care. Conversation flowed naturally, touching on research developments and Hope's latest developmental leaps. Then, as he served dessert, Vivian heard movement from the hallway. Hope appeared in the doorway wearing a tiny blue dress she hadn't been wearing when she left. She clutched something in her small hands, concentration furrowing her brow as she toddled deliberately toward the table. Hope, Vivian started. I thought you were at the museum. Special mission, Hope announced importantly. The phrase was clearly rehearsed. She approached Julian, who knelt to meet her at eye level. Do you have it, little one? Hope nodded solemnly. With careful movement, she opened her hands to reveal a small velvet box. For Mama, she stated. Understanding dawned. Vivian's hands flew to her mouth. Julian took the box, and Hope positioned herself beside him, tiny hand resting on his shoulder in perfect mimicry of adult seriousness. Vivian Cross. Julian's voice was steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. You've made me a better man. A father. A partner. You've shown me that family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build with daily choices and consistent love. He opened the box. An emerald ring sparkled in the candlelight. The same deep green as the dress she'd worn at the ceremony where her old life ended and her new one began. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend forever showing up for you and Hope and whatever future we build together? Yes. The word came out as a whisper, then stronger. Yes, yes, yes. Hope clapped enthusiastically. Dada merry mama. She bounced with joy, her rehearsed seriousness giving way to genuine excitement. Julian slipped the ring onto Vivian's finger, then lifted Hope between them, creating a family embrace that felt like coming home. How long have you been planning this? Vivian asked through happy tears. Months. Julian admitted. But I wanted Hope to be part of it. She helped choose the ring. I picked green, Hope declared proudly. Like Mama's eyes. They married 3 months later. The ceremony took place in the sculpture garden of the Riverside Cultural Center, the flagship location of the initiative Vivian directed. Spring flowers bloomed around them. Art installations created a backdrop that represented their shared values and vision. Only 60 guests attended. Close friends. Family. The research team that had supported Vivian through everything. Julian's executive staff who'd become extended family. Hope took her role as flower girl with characteristic seriousness. She'd been practicing for weeks, carefully placing each petal with deliberate care. Halfway down the aisle, she abandoned her basket and ran to Julian. He lifted her without hesitation, and they finished the walk together. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Hope shouted "No" with such conviction that laughter rippled through the gathering. Julian's vows were simple and profound. I promise to show up every single day. For every moment. For both of you. For whatever comes. Always. Vivian's matched his sincerity. You taught me that family is built, not born. That love is a choice we make every morning. And I choose you today, tomorrow, forever. They sealed their vows with a kiss while Hope clapped between them, the embodiment of the family they created through choice rather than circumstance. The reception unfolded with the same thoughtful intimacy. Excellent food. Meaningful conversations. Dancing that continued long after Hope had fallen asleep in a trusted friend's arms. Eleanor Richards, their most significant donor and close friend now, raised a toast that captured what many felt. To Vivian and Julian, who remind us that life's greatest masterpieces aren't found in galleries, but in the families we create through daily acts of love. Their honeymoon was a family trip to the Italian coast. Hope's eyes widened with wonder at each new discovery. The ocean. Gelato. Pigeons in ancient piazzas. One evening, watching Hope chase seagulls along the shore while the Mediterranean sun set behind her, Julian asked quietly, "Is this what you imagined for your life?" "Not remotely." Vivian leaned into his embrace. "It's infinitely better." Time passed in the way it does for families, marked by milestones and ordinary moments made extraordinary through presence. Hope started preschool, revealing an artistic talent that surprised no one. The gene therapy received full FDA approval. Children who would have died celebrated birthdays. Families who'd been planning funerals planned graduations instead. Vivian and Julian expanded the cultural initiative to 15 cities, each location implementing her vision of art as community dialogue and healing. And when Hope was 2.5, they welcomed a son. Marcus Julian Thorne arrived at 7 pounds, 8 ounces, with Julian's grey eyes and Vivian's determined spirit. Hope approached her baby brother with the same serious consideration she brought to all important matters. "He's very small," she observed, studying Marcus in Vivian's arms. "Does he know I'm his sister?" "He will," Julian assured her, lifting her for a better view. "You'll teach him everything important." "Like what?" Hope asked. "Like colors and stories and being kind," Vivian clarified. Hope nodded. "Decision made. I'll be a good big sister. I promise." She kept that promise with characteristic dedication. As Marcus grew from infant to toddler, Hope became his guide, translator, and occasional benevolent dictator. Years accumulated. First days of school. Lost teeth. Family vacations to places Hope insisted on researching beforehand. Ordinary Tuesday dinners made special through attention and presence. When Hope turned 7, her naturally inquisitive mind began asking more complex questions about family structures. "Lily at school has 2 moms," she informed them one evening during dinner. "And Zach has a mom and a stepdad and a dad he visits on weekends. Different families have different shapes." "That's right," Vivian confirmed. "Families come in many forms." Hope nodded, processing. "But I just have you and Daddy and Marcus." Julian's hand found Vivian's under the table. "That's right. Was it always just us?" The question they'd been preparing for. "Before you were born," Vivian began gently, "I was with someone else. A man named Marcus, like your brother. But he wasn't ready to be a father when you came along." Hope's brow furrowed. "Not ready like when Marcus isn't ready for big kid scissors?" "Something like that. Some people aren't ready for the responsibility of being parents. But Daddy was ready." Hope looked to Julian with complete trust. "I met your mother when you were still growing in her tummy." Julian found simple words for complex truth. "And when you were born, I fell in love with both of you. I knew immediately that I wanted to be your father, even though you didn't grow from my seed. So you chose to be my daddy." "It was the easiest choice I've ever made." Emotion roughened Julian's voice. "And the best one." Hope absorbed this, her young mind working through implications. "I'm glad you chose us." "Me too, little one." Every single day. The conversation revisited over years as Hope's understanding evolved. Each time, they answered with age-appropriate honesty, never hiding the truth, never burdening her with adult complications. When she found the old interview footage at age 10, inevitably discovering it while researching her mother's career for a school project, they sat with her through confusion and hurt. "He said he didn't want me," she whispered through tears. "He said I was a trap." Julian gathered her close. "He was wrong. So terribly wrong. And his inability to see what a gift you are, that was his loss, not your failing." "But why didn't he want me?" "Some people aren't capable of putting someone else's needs before their own," Vivian explained gently, stroking Hope's hair. "It wasn't about you. It was about his limitations as a person." "Are you sad he's not my dad?" Hope looked up at Julian with tear-swollen eyes. "Not for a single second." His answer came without hesitation. "Being your father is the greatest privilege of my life. Not because of biology, but because of who you are. This extraordinary, kind, brilliant person who makes every day better just by being in it." By age 12, Hope had developed her own clear understanding. When a classmate made a thoughtless comment about real parents, Hope responded with characteristic directness. My real father is the one who taught me to ride a bike and checks my math homework and shows up for every concert, she informed the startled boy. Biology is just science. Family is love. Her wisdom left the adults within earshot momentarily speechless. Now, years later, watching Hope argue good-naturedly with Marcus over a board game in the family room, Julian wrapped his arm around Vivian's waist. "They're extraordinary," he murmured. "They came by it honestly." Vivian leaned into his embrace. "They've had an extraordinary example of what matters." Through the window, the setting sun painted their home in golden light. Not the house they'd expected. Not the family either had planned. But the one they deliberately built through daily choice and consistent love. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" Vivian asked. "If that night at the ceremony had gone differently?" "Every day." Julian's voice was quiet. "That interview was simultaneously the worst and best thing that ever happened." "To us," she corrected. "It brought us together." "It did." He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "And I'd go through it all again. Every court battle, every sleepless night, every challenge. For this. For you. For Hope and Marcus. For our family." Vivian rested her head against his chest, listening to the heartbeat that had become her children's lullaby and her own source of certainty. "Me too." Every single time. Because they'd discovered something fundamental. Family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who claims you when you need it most. Who shows up day after day without obligation or expectation. Who loves you not because they have to, but because they choose to. Julian had chosen them from the very beginning. Before he knew what that choice would cost or require. Before he understood the depth of commitment it would demand. He'd shown up at her door at midnight and kept showing up every day since. Not because biology obligated him. Not because contracts required it. Not because public opinion demanded it. But because when love is real, showing up isn't obligation. It's privilege. And that, more than any legal document or genetic test, is what makes a father. What makes a family. What makes forever worth building, one deliberate choice at a time. In the family room, Hope successfully defeated Marcus at the board game. Her victory dance was exuberant and graceless and utterly joyful. Julian laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Vivian watched her husband, her children, the life they'd built from devastation and deception and daily choice. And she understood with perfect clarity that some endings are actually beginnings. Some lies become truth through the living of them. Some strangers become family through the simple act of showing up. And sometimes, the family you need is the one you build yourself, piece by careful piece, choice by deliberate choice, day after precious day. Thank you for being here with this story, my beloved listeners. What defines a parent in your life? Biology or presence? Is family determined by blood or by the choice to show up when it matters most? Your story matters. Share it in the comments below. Let someone know they're not alone in understanding that chosen family can be the truest family we'll ever know. If this tale reminded you what real love looks like, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to Tales of Desire with Mr. Walker for stories that don't just entertain, they transform. Because every week, I'm here, showing up with narratives that touch the soul. Until next time, remember this truth. The family you choose can be the realest family you'll ever know. And love, true love, is measured not in genetics but in the daily choice to be present, to be constant, to be home for someone who needs you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. And thank you for believing, as I do, that stories have the power to change how we see the world and each other. This is Mr. Walker, reminding you that your worth isn't determined by who chose to leave, but by who chooses to stay. Until next time.